I'm going to be painting a semi-abstract landscape scene with some pretty flowers using some yummy techniques. I'm also going to share with you my #1 tip for removing tape without tearing your watercolour paper. Let's get started. A full list of materials and the colours I'm using can be found in the description below. And I've just put my framing tape onto the outside edge of my gummed pad, and that's just so I can get a nice white border, no other reason than that. And I'm just mixing up a little bit of the green gold, and as I said at the beginning of this tutorial, this is from my imagination. I just want to put the paint through their paces and just have a little bit of fun. So it's like an imaginary landscape. What I've mixed there is the teal with a touch of the purple. I'm using my Black Velvet size 14 brush, and I've wet the paper as well, so I've got some, it's quite a nice colour there. Now the paint's really moving nicely as I'm tilting there to the right and adding a little bit more of that teal colour, painting wet into wet. I'm using the masking pen, but you could just use the masking fluid out of the pot, and I'm just sort of drawing these little flower shapes wet on dry, and then allow your masking fluid to dry naturally. I've mixed up some Quinacridone Magenta. I'm painting it wet on dry with my size 10 brush, sort of painting the sort of distant fields coming into the middle distant fields. I'm just putting my painting on a little tilt using my salt container there just to make the paint run down a little bit, and then using my brush to blend. And I'm just adding a little bit more of that purple with the teal, and then dropping in a little bit of the Quinacridone gold, and they really move nicely together there. I'm really sort of trying to just see how they blend together, how they move, what the colours look like, and they're really vibrant. I love painting in this way because you can be very creative and just see what the paint does rather than copying something. I'm just letting the paint sort of take me on this little journey just by experimenting with the colours. This was all wet on dry, this area, but I'm dropping the colours wet in wet. They're sort of reasonably creamy, so it's almost turning damp into damp. But look at how there's like a little tree that's developed on the right hand side. It's amazing. It's just letting these paints do the work. But I love the pink and the way the pink and the purple is doing something together. It's dreamy, and I'm tilting and adding lots more water as well, experimenting, getting some really nice textured effects there. And I'm tilting, letting all the paint sort of run down so you've got some light and dark areas. And I'm using my plastic card now to scratch into the paper. Remember, if you do scratch into the paper, it is permanent, so just be aware of that. So I'm just mixing up a little bit of the violet now with the green gold with a touch of Quinacridone gold, and I'm dropping this in. Now violet and yellow make such a gorgeous warm dark, and this is very, very creamy paint, and I'm using my size 4 brush, and as you can see there, I've just put that creamy paint into the wet paint there at the bottom left just to see what happens there. I'm always a little bit wary of putting too much dark on at this stage because it can get a little bit overpowering. So to stop myself in my tracks, I'm using a little bit of the teal with a touch of the magenta. I love the way that sky's gone. There's some lovely light coming from that sky. So I'm just tilting this around, and I'm going to be using my pipette now to dilute the paint and tilt it just to create some more interesting effects. And I'm using the twig now to draw out some of the paint, to pull it up to create the look of sort of bushes and branches, etc. And you can scratch into the surface as well to create thin permanent lines. I can start spraying now and bringing all that paint down into the foreground over my dried masking fluid, and I'm just using the twig now over this yummy paint, and I'm just sort of scratching in to create some more textures. I'm using the pipette now just to dilute and create some more textures, mopping up as I go as well. I'm just going to drop now a little bit of the teal in. I really like this colour. It's got a little bit diluted with some of the green gold, but I'm just painting this in now, wet into wet, just to get some exciting things happening in the foreground. This is quite creamy paint now. I'm just wanting to kind of mix it up a little bit in the foreground. I'm using my size 10 brush to apply this paint, damp into wet. This colour kind of reminds me of the Winsor & Newton Cobalt Turquoise Light. And if you don't have any of the colours that I'm using here, I will put some alternative suggestions below in the description, so don't worry. So one of the things I would use instead of this teal is I would use, if you don't have any of these sort of similar colours, you could use Cerulean. I've just given the painting a lovely tilt and now I'm giving it a spatter with this gorgeous magenta colour. I'm using the size 4 brush and I've protected my sky and area just below the sky in the distance, because there's quite a lot of lovely colours up there. I don't want to spoil with the spattering, but it's again just to give the impression of textures and wild flowers. I'm sprinkling some sea salt combined with some table salt just on the foreground, not too much, just enough to kind of create some textures. And now allow your painting to dry naturally to allow the salt to work. And as you can see, the salt has worked really well. It's created lots of light textures. They look like wildflowers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the masking fluid with the framing tape. You can use masking tape or even your thumb. Make sure the paper is absolutely dry to not risk any tearing or smudging of the paint. So I'm using the framing tape, the sticky side, just to pull off the masking fluid. I'm also going to use my paper towel to brush off all of the salt as well, just to make everything ready for the next stage. Once you've removed all the masking fluid, if you put some on, you can actually start painting some of the centres in the flowers. So I've decided to keep them white flowers because I thought it'd stand out a little bit. I'm not sure what variety they are, but they look pretty. So I'm using the orange. It's quite a nice orange colour, that Pyrrole orange, for the centres. And I'm just painting this wet on dry, just taking my time, and then using the size 2 brush, I'm just pulling out a few little bits of the orange just to show some sort of markings of where the petals are as well. I'm just doing a little bit here and there. So I'm using my twig now just to draw in some stems here and there, using a little bit of the green gold and just bringing it up onto some of the flowers there. That's the violet mixed with the teal and a tiny touch of green, and it's very watered down, and I'm just painting some little bits of shadows and details on these petals, just a few little flicks here and there, and I'm using the size 2 round brush just because these are quite tiny flowers. It's really quite funny actually, because I'm using this brush thinking it's not going to pick up much paint, and it really does have so much paint in it. I've had to kind of dab it on a bit of tissue off camera because it's hold so much paint for such a tiny brush. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. And I'm just using a little bit of the brown colour that I made there. And remember, you can make the brown mixing pink and green together just to get those little darks in the centre, just at the bottom of where I painted the little orange circles, just to finish off. Just that little bit of detail makes all the difference. Remember, less is more, so try not to do more. It's easier said than done, I know. I'm just putting a few little of the, it's quite nice because I've already mixed up all these colours having fun earlier, but I'm just painting some green leaves and sort of stems in this foreground here. But the little voice in my head is saying, don't do too much because you're going to paint over all that lovely salt that you created earlier. So I am very wary of that, and I want you to be as well, because I think sometimes we can do something we really like and then before you know it, we've done a couple of washes over the top. We think, where did that go? You know, it happens so quickly. So do be mindful of that. I love looking at my palette there. It's so pretty. So I'm going to do another little spatter. Again, you don't have to do this. I'm going to use the magenta. This is going to be wet on dry, spattering, just to get a little bit of sharpness of detail and just to finish off this little painting, which I have thoroughly enjoyed painting. It's been such a sort of joy using these colours and trying out this paper. I felt those little dots were a little bit small, so I've actually gone to my large size 10 brush to try and get some bigger dots. They're not that much bigger though, but not to worry. And I'm actually using a little bit of purple there as well. You always know when I'm going to be finishing because I'm doing my final little bits of spattering. And as you can see, I have masked out the sky with some kitchen towel. Very important, you don't want any dots in your sky. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now. So I'm removing the framing tape. This is a key thing. How does this paper like framing tape? Well, as you can see there, it's pulling off some of the paper. You can see a little bit there. So I thought I'd show you this little sort of trick to a way of stopping that, or helping it a little bit. And it's using a hairdryer. And put it on, hair dry your tape. It doesn't have to be framing tape, it can be masking tape as well. So I've got my hair dryer here, which is on. You can't hear it because this is a voiceover, but just to tell you, it is on. So I'm just blow drying this on the tape to warm up the glue so it's not as sticky sort of thing. It's melting the glue. So I'm just blow drying this here. I'm not quite sure for how long. I'm just going to do it until I kind of feel. And I'm just removing now the framing tape. And as you look at the tape there, there's no paper stuck to the tape. So I'm really impressed with that little trick. So I'm going to do it to the rest of it, because obviously it didn't tear terribly, but it did take off the top of the surface of the paper. So I'm giving all the tape a blow dry. So you might find this useful when you're removing your framing or masking tape. And look, that's really come off easy now. It's literally just flying off. So I'm really impressed with that little technique. I don't use it all the time, but in this instance, because it was taking off so much, I thought I'd show you. So, right, there's my finished painting. I'm really pleased with it. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it inspiring. Maybe get your paints out and try a little doodle like this from your imagination, or even use a photograph. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. And if you'd like to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where you'll get updates of my latest tutorials. And if you want to watch the longer version, it is available on my Patreon membership, along with exclusive tutorials and downloadable outline sketches. A link for the Patreon membership can be found in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Again, happy painting. Bye for now.